Imagine pulling up to an abandoned electric car, looking at its dead battery and thinking, well, that's just an expensive paperweight. Turns out you'd be completely wrong. Inside that dead battery is a hidden treasure: lithium, nickel, cobalt, copper, graphite, manganese, and other valuable materials that automakers around the world are desperately trying to secure. The crazy part? Someone already mined, refined, and assembled them. All that's left is taking them apart. And China has turned that idea into a multi-trillion-dollar business. This isn't about saving the planet because everyone suddenly became environmentally friendly. It's about economics. China manufactures more electric vehicles, solar panels, smartphones, and buildings than any other country on Earth. Eventually, every one of those products reaches the end of its life. Instead of treating them like garbage, China sees them as tomorrow's raw materials. By the end of this video, you'll discover how a worn-out EV battery, an old apartment building, a faded t-shirt, and even yesterday's leftovers are feeding one of the biggest industrial systems ever built, and why experts are measuring its future value in trillions of dollars. Let's start with the star of the show: electric car batteries. A used EV battery may look like nothing more than a giant black brick, but appearances can be very expensive. Before recycling begins, every battery is collected, identified, and carefully inspected. Why the caution? Because even a partially charged lithium battery can catch fire if it's crushed. If the battery still has enough life left, it gets a second career. Instead of powering a car, it can store electricity from solar panels or provide backup power for buildings. It's a smart way to extend its usefulness, but eventually, every battery reaches the same destination: recycling. Once that happens, workers dismantle the battery into modules before shredding and separating its components. Plastic, steel, aluminum, and copper are removed first. What remains is something called black mass, a fine gray-black powder packed with lithium, nickel, cobalt, and manganese. It may not look impressive, but this powder is incredibly valuable. Through chemical processing, these materials are transformed back into battery-grade compounds and shipped to manufacturers, where they become brand new EV batteries all over again. That's not recycling anymore. That's creating a brand new mine, without digging a single hole in the ground. Recycling an EV battery is incredibly profitable because it's packed with valuable metals. But what if the material you're trying to recycle is almost worthless? That's where things get interesting. Believe it or not, one of the biggest recycling headaches on Earth isn't batteries, it's plastic. And not your everyday water bottle. Those are actually the easy ones. A clean plastic bottle is recycling on easy mode. Sort it, wash it, shred it, melt it, and turn it into something new. Simple. Now think about a potato chip bag. It's made from multiple layers of plastic, metal film, adhesives, printed coatings, and often covered with grease or food residue. In other words, it was designed to keep your snacks fresh, and accidentally became a nightmare for recyclers. It's like trying to separate a grilled cheese sandwich back into bread, butter, and cheese. Technically possible? Maybe. Practical? Not really. Traditional mechanical recycling works well for clean, single-material plastics, but once different plastics are fused together or contaminated with food, the quality drops fast. After a few recycling cycles, the material often becomes too weak to reuse. That's why China has been investing in another approach: chemical recycling. Instead of melting plastic, chemical recycling breaks it down into oils, monomers, and chemical feedstocks using methods like pyrolysis, depolymerization, and solvolysis. Those raw chemicals can then be used to manufacture new plastic products. Sounds perfect, right? Not exactly. These processes require large amounts of energy, expensive facilities, and carefully sorted materials. In many cases, the final product isn't even another plastic bag. It becomes fuel or industrial chemical feedstock instead. So, while chemical recycling solves problems that mechanical recycling can't, it isn't a magic wand. But here's where history takes a surprising turn. For decades, China wasn't just recycling its own plastic, it was recycling the world's plastic. Beginning in the early 1990s, nearly half of all globally traded plastic waste ended up in China. Countries across North America and Europe filled shipping containers with used plastic and sent them overseas, where Chinese factories transformed that waste into raw materials for manufacturing. It wasn't charity, it was business. Then everything changed in 2018. China launched the National Sword Policy, banning dozens of categories of imported waste and setting contamination limits so strict that plastic imports collapsed by roughly 99%. Suddenly, recycling programs across the United States struggled. Several countries increased waste incineration, and millions of tons of plastic had nowhere to go. The world realized something shocking. Its recycling system had been depending on one country all along. And China? It wasn't stepping away from recycling. It was simply replacing imported trash with its own, and building an even bigger domestic recycling machine in the process. When people talk about solar energy, they usually focus on one question: how much electricity does it generate? Almost nobody asks the follow-up question: what happens when millions of those solar panels stop working? Because eventually, every solar panel reaches retirement, and suddenly, that clean energy solution becomes nearly 45 pounds of tightly bonded material that refuses to come apart. Inside a single panel, you'll find glass, aluminum, copper wiring, silicon cells, protective polymers, backing sheets, and one tiny ingredient that's worth far more than its size suggests: silver. Here's the surprising part. By weight, a solar panel is mostly glass and aluminum, but economically, the silver alone represents more than 60% of the panel's total value. It's like buying a giant safe just to recover a handful of diamonds hidden inside. The recycling process starts off looking simple enough. Workers remove the aluminum frame, disconnect the cables, separate the junction box, and recover the heavy glass. After that, things get complicated. Those remaining layers were engineered to survive decades of blazing heat, freezing winters, hailstorms, heavy rain, and UV radiation. Engineers spent years making sure they would never come apart. Now recyclers have to undo all of that, quickly, efficiently, and somehow still make a profit. That's why many recycling facilities recover the easy materials first, while extracting the valuable silver remains one of the biggest technical challenges in the industry. China expects retired solar panels to reach roughly 18 gigawatts of capacity by 2030, representing around 1.4 to 1.5 million tons of material. By 2040, cumulative retired panels could grow to nearly 20 million tons. Not because solar technology failed, but because China installed an enormous number of panels over the last 2 decades, and they're all aging on a similar timeline. But even those numbers are tiny compared to China's biggest waste stream. Forget batteries. Forget solar panels. The real heavyweight is construction waste. When buildings are demolished, they leave behind mountains of concrete, bricks, asphalt, steel, timber, glass, insulation, and countless mixed materials. The recycling process is surprisingly straightforward. Large reusable materials are removed first. Powerful magnets pull out steel. Crushers turn concrete and bricks into recycled aggregate, while sorting systems remove lighter contaminants. That recycled material can then be used in road bases, construction blocks, and selected concrete applications. Sounds efficient, right? Here's the twist. In 2020, China generated roughly 2.6 billion tons of construction and demolition waste, but only about 312 million tons, roughly 12%, was actually recycled. Unlike batteries or electronics, the technology isn't the problem here. The obstacle is simple economics. In many cases, dumping construction debris into a landfill has been cheaper than processing it for reuse. Add inconsistent material quality from demolition sites, and suddenly recycling becomes much harder than simply crushing concrete. Sometimes the biggest barrier isn't engineering, it's doing the math. What if I told you one of the richest gold mines in China isn't underground? It's probably sitting inside an old smartphone, or that dusty laptop you've been meaning to recycle for 3 years. Sounds unbelievable, but it's true. A ton of gold ore from a traditional mine may contain only a few grams of gold, but a ton of discarded circuit boards can contain significantly more precious metals. That's why experts call electronic waste an urban mine. No pickaxes, no explosives, just millions of forgotten devices hiding valuable resources in plain sight. Electronic waste includes phones, computers, televisions, refrigerators, washing machines, cables, servers, electric motors, and countless other devices. Inside them are copper, aluminum, steel, gold, silver, palladium, specialty metals, plastics, and glass. The recycling process is surprisingly sophisticated. First, batteries and hazardous components are safely removed. Any reusable parts are separated, while the remaining devices are dismantled by hand or shredded. Magnets pull out steel, Eddy current separators recover non-ferrous metals like aluminum and copper, and advanced optical and electrostatic systems sort the remaining materials. Finally, smelting and chemical refining recover the valuable metals while the remaining waste is treated responsibly. China has been rapidly expanding this industry. Between 2024 and 2025, roughly 53 million used home appliances and mobile phones entered standardized recycling channels, growing at about 12% annually. Some licensed recycling facilities now process more than 2,000 discarded appliances every single day, transforming what looks like junk into streams of reusable raw materials. But even electronics aren't China's toughest recycling challenge. Believe it or not, it's your clothes. Modern clothing is designed for comfort, durability, and style, but unfortunately, not for recycling. A shirt made from 100% cotton or 100% polyester is relatively manageable, but today's clothing often combines cotton, polyester, elastane, dyes, printed graphics, zippers, buttons, coatings, and synthetic fibers, all stitched together into one product. Great for fashion, terrible for recycling. Many old garments are resold or repaired, which is the best possible outcome. Others are shredded into insulation, industrial padding, or cleaning cloths. But once a shirt is shredded, it can never become another shirt again. Chemical recycling offers a more advanced solution by breaking certain synthetic fibers, such as polyester, back into their original building blocks. China is investing heavily in this technology, with companies producing extremely high-purity recycled polyester feedstock and expanding production capacity for the years ahead. The bigger picture is impossible to ignore. From dead EV batteries and plastic waste to solar panels, demolished buildings, discarded electronics, and worn-out clothing, China is transforming waste into a strategic resource. It's not just cleaning up garbage. It's building an industrial system where yesterday's trash becomes tomorrow's supply chain. And that's the real lesson. The biggest resource boom of the next decade may not come from discovering new mines. It may come from finally realizing we've been throwing them away all along. So the next time you're about to toss out an old phone, dead battery, or worn-out t-shirt, remember, you might be throwing away tomorrow's raw materials. The future isn't just about discovering new resources, it's about getting smarter with the ones we already have. And who knows? That dusty drawer full of old gadgets might be worth more than your "I'll organize it someday" promise. If you enjoyed this video, hit like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.